And now to allegations of hypocrisy and absurdity as the recovery from Superstorm Sandy becomes a political football. This week, after much delay, Congress is going to vote on relief money for storm victims, but politicians from the Northeast are outraged that Republicans want to give them much less than they're asking for. ABC's David Kerley is at the White House this morning. David, good morning.
Good morning, Dan. Not so fast is what some Republicans are saying. So for the third time, we are going to hear some heated words from Northeast lawmakers when this comes up in the House of Representatives.
I need help so bad.
2.5 months, and the victims of Sandy and their representatives have had enough.
They have suffered long enough. They need to hear from their government.
They are helping, but in chunks. Congress passed more than $9 billion in aid a week ago. But the states and the president have asked for another $50 billion. Instead, the House plan calls for just $17 billion for what it calls emergency aid.
Absurd. Absolutely absurd. We demand nothing less than we have given the rest of the country.
And surprisingly, some Republicans who have opposed Sandy aid are from hurricane regions. One from Mississippi called for more help just last year for Katrina relief, but opposed Sandy relief, making him a target for skewering.
Many of my constituents in Mississippi are still dealing with the effects of Hurricane Katrina.
Let's pretend that instead of your constituents in Mississippi, it's someone else's constituents in New York. And instead of 7 years later, it's 2 months later.
That kind of talk sets off New Jersey's Governor Chris Christie.
We sent them there to do the work for us, not to sit down there and play with each other.
But Republicans want specifics. We asked Christie's office 3 times to explain their request. Nearly $5 billion for housing. Is that temporary housing, rebuilding homes, or loans? And $700 million for what is called individual assistance. Is that food, rent, actual payments, or loans? Christie's office has not answered any of those questions. Still haven't heard from him either. The House is back tomorrow night. This bill will be debated on Tuesday, and Dan and Brianna, we actually expect the vote to happen on Wednesday.
Keep pushing for answers. Thank you, David. Sandy relief, by the way, just one of many big fights brewing in Washington right now, including gun control, the confirmation of Chuck Hagel at defense, and, of course, the looming and unpleasant sequel to the fiscal cliff. Here with a forecast of sort, the host of ABC's This Week, George Stephanopoulos, who knows everything, of course, can see the future. George, right. Let's talk about gun control. The vice president is going to submit his proposal for post-Newtown gun control on Tuesday, we believe. It seems to be coalescing around cracking down on high-capacity magazines and also beefing up background checks on gun buyers. Can the administration muscle those two things through?
Well, the White House also says they're going to continue to push the assault weapons ban, but they know they're not going to get that through very quickly. Lots of opposition to that. They do believe they can create a consensus, particularly around this idea of background checks, universal background checks. The NRA not backing down yet, though, which is also why the White House will be looking at executive orders they can act on their own, tightening enforcement of existing gun laws, more data sharing for where gun sales are coming from. And you see people like Senator Chuck Schumer come out this morning and call for big retailers to voluntarily suspend any sales of assault weapons while this is being debated. But Dan, you look since Newtown, in the 2 months since Newtown, there's been a huge spike in the sale of assault weapons as we have this debate over whether or not to ban them.
And another battle the president's facing is the looming debt ceiling. Many liberals, including Paul Krugman, have been advocating this sort of obscure provision allowing Treasury, in theory, to mint $1 trillion platinum coin. Yesterday, we heard from the administration. They said that's not going to happen. So how does this play out? The president said he's not going to negotiate over the debt ceiling.
And the White House now saying the only option is for the Congress to pass it. There's no substitute for congressional action. But you see the Republicans in the House are saying we're only going to increase the debt limit if the increase in the debt limit is matched dollar for dollar with spending cuts. That is a recipe for stalemate right now. There doesn't appear to be a way around this right now, and it is coming fast.
More stalemate, and we all pay. George Stephanopoulos, thank you for your reporting this morning. And George, by the way, has a packed show this morning with 2 powerhouse roundtables. That's this week, coming up later right here on ABC. George, thanks again.